Hello and good afternoon. My name is Rob Pilley. I'm a local resident. I'm also a professional zoologist, which means I study and love the environment. You are very welcome to join me in this gorgeous, gorgeous place. This is a publicly rewilded area. This is an area that's been designated back to the wild. It's to allow the wild to come back into our urban areas, and this is absolutely essential for these days when habitat is getting so small these days that we have to invite it into our housing areas. Isn't it gorgeous? As we look around, this area over here has been designated a wild meadow. There's of course a path down the middle. Over this area here, this is going to be trees, and there'll be wild grasses and plants growing amongst them. And as I turn around over here, this again is all the wild meadow and all the wild grasses. To me, as a biologist, I absolutely love it. I see the amazing potential that we've got in this landscape, but I also appreciate that it looks kind of a mess, which is a shame because not so long ago it was utterly teeming with wildflowers, grasshoppers. It was a wonderful, wonderful image of what wilding should be about. But unfortunately, this is the downside to rewilding. When you look around before and after the blooming period, it looks a bit of a mess. But unfortunately, in this case, it's an absolute evil that we have to tolerate. This is wilding. This isn't management anymore. This is allowing an area of land which may not have been wild for many, many years, many decades in fact. We're handing it back to the wild. We're saying, wild, you know better than us. We're only humans. We only know so much about management, about coppicing, about planting, about hedging, about trimming, about mowing. Wild, over to you. In fact, I'm loving this landscape so much, I thought I'd sit right in the middle of it just to show you guys the details. And as with all things to do with the wild, it's all about the details, because the details lead us to what's known as biodiversity, the richness. That is exactly what we need for multiple species to live in this gorgeous land of ours. If I show you down here, you can see we've got a whole array of different grasses here, all these different layers. You've got plantains here, you've got the grasses, you've got dandelions, you've got buttercups. You've got an array of diversity, of richness. You've got dead grass stems, but if I look like this, if you look across here, you've got grass stems in the foreground, you've got lower herbage down here, slightly taller bits and things. You need this layering to allow the insects to come back. On a monocultural lawn, meaning one species, just grass that's mown flat and even and uniform, we might think that's beautiful and even and created and carved by humans. But as a result of that, there's no diversity to that. It looks pretty and neat to us, but there's no options in there for nature. What nature needs is this variety. We need these layers, we need these textures for the animals that live down there in the undergrowth, and they come up to the surface. The grasshoppers, the bees, the flies that live on these stems. As I'm talking to you right now, there are flies buzzing around me. This mess is absolutely what we need to create this diversity. Without this mess, we get no diversity, we get no wilding. And it's this mess all around me that is absolutely necessary to wilding. We are, after all, letting it go wild again. So when you let an area go wild, you don't just benefit from the flowers or the orchard, you have to let it go wild 100%, 12 months of the year. Wilding is no management. You can't then go in and mow it. You can't then go in and plough it up again. You can't then go in and tidy up the hedges and the trees. Wild is wild, and unfortunately wild is not tidy, it's not angular, it's not flat, it's undulating, it's creative, it's random. This is wild, this is the magic with wild. And I know at the moment it looks a mess. I look at it, I think, God, for an area which was once mowed and trimmed and tidy, it does look a mess. But in time, my confidence with wilding, and believe me, I know, give it 1 or 2 years, 3, 4 years before you know it, the landscape starts to change. The textures really come through. Random new species start to grow. New insects, new birds start to come in, but only because the wild is here. Without the wild being allowed to take its land back and be creative, then it's never going to return. If we think that we keep on dominating and managing, cutting, flattening, making things neat, we think we know better, but we don't. We have to have faith in nature. The only way we're going to see true wild in England, for us to love it, for us to smell it, for us to hear it, is by allowing nature to come back and to take back its land. This is the key to wilding. And I'm sorry to say, in the meantime, we have to tolerate the mess, the lack of verges being mowed, the lack of hedges being trimmed, the hundreds of little trees and little plastic tubey things which look awful. We have to tolerate these things for the bigger picture, for the next generation, for the next lot of children who one day, and I love it, the thought of this, so one day they'll walk through this area, they'll be none the wiser. Those kids will have a true wild area, whereas you and me, we've never known the true wild. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. That's why we want to go rewild again. We want to feel the wild in our hearts, in our eyes, in our minds. For our happiness, for our well-being, for our world. The world needs wild.